No more jail for you. You innocent. That's at least what the jury said. Daniel Penny, the subway vigilante who took down Jordan Neely last year in the subway, is going free. Looks like he is going home. I guess in the eyes of a lot of people, they didn't see, Daniel Penny as having used excessive force. He got acquitted. Let's see what the news has to say about it.
Daniel Penny, the former Marine charged in the chokehold death of Jordan Neely on a New York City subway last year, was found not guilty of criminally negligent homicide by a Manhattan jury on Monday. This comes after a judge dismissed a more serious second-degree manslaughter charge last week after the jury could not come to a verdict on the count they were hung. Gloria Pazmino, tell us the latest.
Well, we are getting a live reaction right from inside that courtroom. My colleague Lauren Del Valle has been sitting there as the verdict was read. Not guilty. Visible smiles from Daniel Penny, who has just been acquitted on that second charge, the criminally negligent homicide. At the same time, the father of Jordan Neely, the victim in this case, escorted out of the room after he had an outburst with an expletive inside that courtroom as the verdict was being read. Court officers stepping in to...
So, real quick, did any of y'all think that, Jordan Neely was doing something outlandish on the subway enough to get choked out? Now, I'm in Los Angeles and I've seen some pretty crazy stuff on the subway. And I know how a lot of homeless people can get on the subway. It gets really, really wild. It gets really, really, really wild. And I guess Daniel Penny probably, according to him, felt that, people's lives were in danger. So he had to step in and handle some business. However, I do believe that he probably could have handled that business without strangling the man to death. You know what I mean? He probably could have just subdued him or just, just held him down. I didn't think he had to choke him out to where, he died.
To escort Mr. Zachary Carter out of the room. Andrew Zachary, as his name, I should say. We are also hearing audible reaction directly in the park behind me. Protesters have been here all morning, and they are now starting to chant loudly in response to this verdict. Today, for the first time in the past 6 weeks since we've been here, Daniel Penny also had some supporters in this crowd, but now we are hearing the chanting. In fact, it was something that his defense attorney tried to ask for a mistrial on this morning because of the presence of loud supporters, which he believed could be heard by the jury inside the courtroom as they were deliberating. They are chanting, "No justice, no peace," which can be heard from inside that courtroom, according to my colleague Lauren Del Valle. So for now, 6 weeks after the fact, Daniel Penny acquitted on the second charge, criminally negligent homicide. Days after this jury...
I'm so glad I spelled acquitted correctly in my taskbar right there. But real quick, though, this is a difficult thing because I really know how homeless people get down in these urban cities. And just seeing what we seen in LA, we had homeless people push people in front of trains. Like, they're really out of it. So this is a tough one.
Jury initially told this judge that they were hung on the top charge, the manslaughter and the second-degree charge, the most serious of the two. The DA moved to dismiss that charge after the jury said they couldn't come to an agreement, and after the judge agreed to dismiss the charge, he instructed the jury to go back into the deliberation room this morning and continue to deliberate. And now, just about an hour and a half after they started deliberating for the day, we are hearing back that verdict. Daniel Penny not guilty of the criminally negligent homicide charge, nearly a year after he placed Jordan Neely, a homeless street artist, in a fatal chokehold in a New York City subway.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say it's worth just reemphasizing the fact that this was a hung jury on the most serious charge, the second
Yeah,
degree
they couldn't
manslaughter, and that
decide.
was dismissed last week. And the jury of 12, coming out today and acquitting him of the lesser charge of criminally negligent homicide. Have we heard from Daniel Penny's team?
Well, one thing I can tell you is that, you mentioned the jury. This is a jury made up of Manhattanites. I sat here watching jury selection before the trial was getting started, and I watched just how carefully every juror was being questioned and picked out. These are people who live here in Manhattan. They ride the subway nearly every day. Many of them talked about the fact that they had witnessed outbursts on the subway. Some said that they at
Right.
times felt threatened by those
Right.
outbursts, but
That that's the thing about that's what's perplexing about this man. You want to say an injustice was done. Then again, when you're dealing with a lot of these homeless people that may have some mental issues, you almost got to say, all right, what if my mother or my sister was on that train and this guy was doing some crazy stuff? You know what I mean? Would I want somebody to have stepped in? Yeah, this guy lost his life, which I wish it didn't happen, but these homeless people, you just don't know you don't know what you're gonna get. You don't know. I mean, you don't know what kind of day you're gonna have when you ride these buses, when you ride these subways, when you ride these trains. You don't know. You don't know how your day is gonna end when that's your everyday life, taking a bus, taking a train, taking a subway, taking a whatever. And as much as you want to say, man, this is an injustice, you kind of got to say, I don't want to cross that line.
but others said that they weren't. They were also asked about their experiences with mental illness and
Right.
homelessness. And what I think all of that encapsulates and really just paints a picture about the state of New York City and many of the issues that the city is grappling with. Mentally ill people, homelessness, public safety, and the perception of public safety, especially in the city's subways. This was something that was really happening a lot at the time of the incident, and people continue to be concerned about. We are seeing that play out here by this jury.
All right, Gloria, thank you so much. I want to go to Joey Jackson now for some legal analysis. Joey, are you surprised by this? What's your reaction?
Yeah, Pamela, I'm not
I'm
surprised
kind
by
of
it.
not either.
Certainly, we saw just last week that they were hung up on the reckless charge. That was the manslaughter charge that carried the 15 years. And I think that there were concerns as to why they were hung up. I think when you look at this, what does it tell us? First of all, we have to look at what negligent.
You kind of got to have to live in a city to kind of understand how he got off. You know, I mean, I'm not. I will admit, I think he did use excessive force, though. And I'll be honest with you, because he used excessive force, I think he should do some time. I think they wanted to throw at him 15 years, but for what he did, I probably would have voted for like. But man, was he saving lives though? I can't.
Criminally negligent
I can't
homicide
say.
means. It means that the jury would conclude that he was negligent. That is, that he failed to perceive the
Right.
risk that his activities could cause the death of Jordan Neely. However, I think that there are two issues that you look at that are critical. Number one, was it self-defense? Certainly, that's what the defense argued, that he, that is Jordan
I
Neely,
don't think it was
represented an
self-defense
immediate threat,
because
and as a
I
result.
don't think it was self-defense because he wasn't coming at Daniel Penny personally. Now, was he coming at the other passengers? That's a different story. If he was coming at some other passengers and Daniel Penny stepped in, I kind of got to see it his way. I think that he shouldn't have choked him out as long as he did.
result of representing that immediate threat of death or serious physical injury, that restraining him in the way that he did was reasonable and appropriate. And so that was the one issue. I think the second issue was the dealing with causation. What does causation mean? It means that the prosecution had to establish
look how long he got him down on
caused,
it.
that is, the defendant in this case, Mr. Perry, the death of Jordan Neely.
Yeah, he should have been let him go by. And I gotta be honest with you. Now that I look at now that I look at this, and I don't mean to be talking over the video, he's got him down there for a long time. And I just think that's unnecessary, because once those two other guys are there, they could have just helped hold him down. He didn't have to keep. So I could kind of see where they were hung. I would have gave him, I don't know, man. How long he's got it? How long he's got him? 15 years may be necessary.
Examiner saying, in fact, it was the chokehold that caused it. On the other hand, you had the defense saying a number of things. Number one, that there wasn't sufficient pressure applied such that it could be the chokehold. Number two, that schizophrenia diagnosis, that the issue with the synthetic marijuana, etc., caused it. So I think there were plenty of issues.
This is almost like a George Floyd situation in essence, you know? George Floyd, he died because I believe he died because he was doped up. I don't think the knee really did it. I think the knee didn't help. But I think the officer should have still been responsible for George Floyd's death, because, you know, I just think that way, but I don't think that. I don't know. I'm not trying to open another can of worms, and we already got open.
Jury to conclude that just beyond the reasonable doubt, either A, it was self-defense, and B, that he wasn't the cause. So those were two good reasons as to why they could acquit, and that's exactly what they did.
Interesting. Let's see what Fox News got to say about it. I heard Fox News had.
It is, Bianca. We're right next to a group of pro-Jordan Neely protesters who've been here throughout the morning. They were actually part of the group that the defense had argued was disrupting the jury. What we can tell you, though, now is that Daniel Penny has been found not guilty of criminally negligent homicide. That was the second count. Remember, the first count, the jury could not come to a conclusive decision on a unanimous decision. But this one, they were unanimous, not guilty. The jury deliberating for more than 24 hours across 5 days before finally reaching this verdict. Daniel Penny found not guilty on all counts. On Friday, the judge overseeing dismissed the more severe charge.
Yeah, look at that. See, that is excessive.
15-year maximum.
He could have let him go. He could have let him go. He could have let him get up.
Unanimous verdict on that count. Now, a jury of 12 New Yorkers been locked.
He could have let him. He could have let him up, and just the other guys could have just held him. Yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, I think he stepped in to save people. If this guy was a threat, but he just took it too far. He got to get that 15 years in my book. Now that I look at it.
Down in that courtroom, like we said, for 5 days. It was 24 hours of deliberation.
You caused a death. You took a life.
To get to that first count. Once the judge dismissed that first count, they went to the second count. And that's when they finally got this decision where he was found not guilty of criminally negligent homicide. And that was shortly after they started deliberating this morning. They came in just after 10 a.m. this morning. They were inside for a little over an hour. There was some back and forth between the defense and the judge. When the defense came out, they came up to the judge and said, there's been protesters. And with so many windows open in the courtroom, we're told from our reporter, Michelle Ross, who's been inside, that there are so many windows open in that courtroom because of how hot it is in that building, that they could hear the protesters potentially from down in the street. The judge argued, well, there was protests on both sides. You had Jordan Neely protesters and you had Daniel Penny protesters. So both of them have been at each other. The defense was arguing that the Neely protesters were louder and the jury could potentially hear that, and that's why they would need to possibly switch rooms. That didn't get to that point because the jury found him not guilty of criminally negligent homicide. You know, at the request of prosecutors on Friday, the judge dismissed that second-degree manslaughter count. That was the big one. That carried a maximum of 15 years. This second count carried 4 years. There was no minimum in either of these counts. This directed the jury to turn to that lesser charge. What that means is now you're free to consider count 2. Now, whether or not that makes any difference or not, we'll see. But what we're going to do is wait for Michelle Ross, because she's coming here. Prosecutors allege that Penny killed Neely. We'll go back to what this case is. A 30-year-old homeless man who had previously been a Michael Jackson impersonator when he placed him in a 6-minute-long chokehold on a subway car last year.
6 minutes.
Including for 51 seconds after his body went limp. Now, Assistant District Attorneys have argued that Penny knew his actions.
So after his body went limp, he still held on to him for almost another whole minute. When you in situations like that, that minute seems like a lifetime.
Could kill Neely, but continued to hold him in a chokehold for what they said was way too long, and they did not recognize his humanity. The medical examiner concluded that the chokehold did kill Neely. The defense arguing that Neely died from a genetic condition, they say, and that the synthetic marijuana found in his system.
It is mighty, it's mighty interesting that, and this is kind of where I see a lot of people who try to make it racial. That when these black men get choked out, it wasn't the choking that killed them. It was this weird drug, synthetic DNA, nonsense that they would have died anyway, but the white dude just happened to be choking him out. So this is kind of where I don't know. I don't know. I heard enough of this though. I'm kind of cool on the rest of this though. Um, well, Daniel Penny, no more jail for you. He goes free. Are people gonna go out there and riot like they did George Floyd? Nah. There's too much other stuff going on in the world for people to really even care anymore. A lot of people don't even care about this. But it is what it is. As GRN Independent, check us out at globalreferencenews.com for more geopolitical news, to what's going on around the world. Give us a like and subscribe. Like rocking out with us. Come back again if you want to.